What's on the docket today? What will we document?
Hello and welcome to Doll Doc. Today I'm going to show you how I create my yarn wefts. I first learned how to make these from Mozekyto. A link to her tutorial will be in the description.
Let's start doctoring.
Here are a few yarns from my stock. Unfortunately, I've had these for a while and don't remember the brands. I do know the beige and brown are the same brand, and the pink is the same brand as the purple and blonde I'll be using later. I like working with 100% acrylic yarn. The only yarn here that I'm not sure if it's 100% acrylic is the dark blue. A hack I found for storing my yarn is using empty coffee cans and poking a hole in the lid. I can usually fit 2 colors to a can, and this method keeps the yarn from rolling away from me as I work. I can keep the container by my chair and pull the yarn as needed. Tools for making wefts are pretty easy to come by. I use a cooling rack to tie the yarn to for brushing, a peg comb for combing out the yarn, and a normal comb for styling, separating, and combing through pigment. A small pair of scissors, a piece of the back of a sketchbook, 8 centimeters wide by 12 centimeters tall with a small slit cut into the top, and a mini straightener. Once the yarn is brushed and styled, I use a piping bag with Elmer's Glue All Extra Strength and an old paintbrush for spreading the glue. Now that we have everything we need, let's take the yarn and slip the end into the notch at the top and begin wrapping the yarn. For long wefts, I use a 12 centimeter length. Once the yarn is wrapped, I cut the top end. For my size cooling rack, I use 5 strands per square for regular yarn and 3 strands for thicker brands. The blue yarn I had has strings in it. I like to remove those before I tie it. Find the end and gently pull it out of the strand. Instead of tying multiple strands at once, I like tying them one at a time. This is just my preference. I find by tying them one by one keeps where I glue the weft flatter. I like the glue line to be as flat as possible to avoid adding excess bulk to the wig. Next, I unravel each strand of yarn. This may take a bit longer, but I find it can make the wefts fuller and longer in the end. Here I have 2 squares of each yarn. One I will unravel and brush, and the other I will just brush out. The blue was measured the same as the others, but because of the type of yarn it is, and removing the strings, the fibers have loosened and stretched some already. I've unraveled the top, and now let's brush them out. With some brands, the difference is very subtle, but you'd be surprised how a centimeter or 2 can change the length of a doll wig. The yarn to the left was unraveled. It remains longer and fuller than the sections I didn't unravel before brushing. Also, I brush in short tapping strokes starting at the ends, so less fibers break this way. The difference is more noticeable in the purple and blonde yarn. In the blue, I saw very little difference. Now let's straighten. If you don't have a mini straightener, that's okay. You can use a larger one too. If it has an adjustable temperature, keep it at 180 or less. In Mozekyto's tutorial, she uses this temperature, pressing hard and pulling slow. But what if you only have a high temp straightener with no adjustable setting? Don't worry, it will still work. The mini straightener I use is high temp. Instead of clamping down hard and pulling slow, you'll want to do the opposite. Light pressure and slide the straightener quick. What if you don't want a long wig? and don't want to waste yarn by having to cut your wig short. Well, this is where the 8cm side of the board comes in handy. Wrap your yarn and cut it, then tie it to your cooling rack, or whatever else you're using. Then I unravel it. This link works great for medium length hair, and if you want shorter hair, cut it in half. This gives you 2 wefts for the brushing effort of 1. I should have straightened my shorter length before cutting it though. Now with my piping bag and brush, I glue down the wefts. I try to keep my lines neat and even. Once dry, I trim the glue edges. My goal is to have my glue lines as thin as possible. For these examples, I'm making wefts for the different styles and or types of hair texture. You can straighten your wefts, leave them just combed for a natural or wavy hair look. You can also keep them just unraveled for some cute natural curls. I love how each brand of yarn can create so many unique looks. Here are the yarns at their different lengths. So what if you don't have the color of yarn you want and you don't want to buy more for one wig? Or maybe you need an ombre? Well, let's dye it! Soft pastels aren't only for the face and body blushing. They can also transform your wefts. For this blonde hair, I wanted to give it some dark roots. I shave off some pastel with an X-Acto blade and brush it onto the roots. You can also shave pastel directly onto the hair. I tend to use my cheaper pastels for this unless I don't have the color I want, because it does take a good amount of pigment. Once I brush the pigment on, I comb it through. Don't forget the backs! Next, I wanted to turn this gray beige yarn into a coppery red color. For the last dyed weft, let's do a fun tri-colored gradient. The only downside of soft pastels I've found is I usually get a more subtle variation of the original color. I've heard you can get more vibrant colors with some markers, but I haven't liked the results I've gotten so far when I've tried those methods. Let me know if you've ever used markers to dye yarn, and if you'd like to see a video of it. After the color is applied, I rinse the yarn and apply a small amount of fabric softener to it before rinsing it again. Here is it at each step. You will want to rinse your yarn at least once to get rid of most of the pastel powder. After a rinse, you might have some pigment still coming off, but it takes rubbing the yarn really hard against something to transfer the pigment. On the copper color, I should have rinsed and dried it twice. Let me know if you've enjoyed this week's bonus video by hitting that like button. Also, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notification bells so you'll know when I post a new doll video each week. Would you like to see more of these type of bonus videos? And if so, of what? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you next Wednesday.